Hello, this is Mr. Red Fox, and this is part 2 of my my Ultimate Fallout game series. Now, in the first series, I talked about the setting, general idea behind the characters, behind your starting characters. In this game, in part 2, I'll be going over in depth about what I would envision the main story would be, the types of side quests we'd have going on, what the central conflict, well, I talked about what the central conflict was going to be in the part 1, but I'll be going more in depth on what the central conflict is, some cool ideas for locations, all that type of cool stuff. So let's get to it after the cut. So, as the title placard says, a big thing about Fallout games is, and this is just keeping it real, even before Bethesda ever bought the IP, is that the main storyline in most of them is not really that deep. Fallout 1, you're trying to find a part for the water purification system. But there's more to it. The setting was more important than the setting of the game was more important than how can I put this? Than the main storyline. It was the stuff around that was going on in the setting, side missions that were more interesting, and that's been the case for most of the Fallout games, at least for the first game. The second game had a better storyline with the Master and his super mutants and all that type of stuff. And Fallout 3, I mean, I would say that the story in Fallout 3 was trash, hot buttered trash. And Fallout 4 had an even worse story, in my opinion. Fallout New Vegas, the main story is one of those stories that what I like to call an unfolding narrative. You think something's happening, one thing's happening, then something else is happening instead. So the opening of Fallout 3 essentially is kind of like, Fallout New Vegas is, okay, you were shot in the head, you're trying to get revenge. You know, it's like a standard Western revenge tale. But then, as you get further into it, you realize, oh wait, no, that's not what's actually going on here. There's more going on here than what you initially think. And that's what makes Fallout New Vegas, in my opinion, have the strongest story of all the Fallout games, of all the quote-unquote modern Fallout games. Because, you know, Fallout 2, you're basically, it's set a certain amount of time after the events of Fallout 1. Society has degraded even further, and you have this guy going around making super mutants. That's the big thing in Fallout 2, and you're trying to find out why he's trying to do this and stop him. Fallout 3 takes place on the East Coast. Between the events of Fallout 1? No, before the events of Fallout 1. And it's a divergent storyline. It's Bethesda's own take on the lore and the world, and I'm not going to get into it. But the story, I'm trying to find my dad who disappeared because he wants to he wants to use a device that's hidden in the Jefferson Memorial that'll basically create a better, purify the water and decontaminate the radiation. Kind of a lame storyline, in my opinion. Then you get Fallout 4, which is the plot of Fallout 4 is you're a father trying to find his wayward son. So it's basically the plot of Fallout 3 in reverse. Both plots are kind of stupid, in my opinion. So we're gonna sidestep away from those crappy ass games and go with something that's a little bit more, how can I put this, more interesting in my humble opinion. So we're gonna talk about Fallout what would be my ultimate plot line for my Fallout game. So, in part 1, which I'll leave a link in the corner, the left-hand corner, part 1 of my thing, I said that one of the key points was that you had multiple playable characters, and the setting is that a way that you could have better technology, more advanced technology than you had in the Fallout game is you have a group of scientists who, former employees of Vault-Tec, who leave the company 10 years before the Great War, and they start their own business. And this way you can have more advanced technology because they created their own cool shit, you know? Well, what if you took that a little bit further in what your main character's motivation is for what they're doing? So, let's say you're a playable super mutant. Let's say that these team of scientists have come out with technology that will restore the fertility of super mutants, gender and fertility, so they can actually, you know, be a viable species. You know, Gen 1, Gen 2, right? For Gen 1 super mutants. Gen 2, they can do that and stop them from continuously mutating into behemoths and shit like that. Nightkin, they can actually implement a wide-ranging cure for the insanity of Nightkin, stuff like that. Ghouls, you know, we can stop you from going feral and stop the radiation damage. For human characters, I don't know. I admit that I'm at a loss to create a motivation for a human character to team up with these super scientists. But basically, that's the major thing, okay? You're trying to do this, and, you know, for proof of concept, they cure you, your character, giving you gender if you're a super mutant, or, you know, making you not be a feral bastard if you're a ghoul. But for, you know, for a grand cure that would be, you know, able to help everybody, you've got to go on this quest to find this rogue shadow operative from Vault-Tec who essentially stayed with them during the war, you know, used their technology that they used to stay viable, and has stolen their MacGuffin, and you have to go find it. And that's where you basically gives you a incentive to travel around, find shit to do, become more badass, all that type of stuff. I think that could work as a storyline. I think that could actually be a viable way of playing these types of games. For a better storyline than what we've been getting. Now, I know that's not the best, you know, that's not as interesting as New Vegas's plotline or anything like that, but hey, you know, I'm not someone who writes for a living, you know, I'm not Tim Kaine, Leonard Boyarsky, alright? So, those are just some ideas that I have for a plot line, for what I would consider to be a better plot line for my Ultimate Fallout game. Next, I'll go over in depth about factions, factional disciplines, that type of thing. How I would like some of the factional side quests to go in my Ultimate Fallout game after the cut. So, one of the key points of Fallout games, or, you know, any open world action RPG, are factional side quests. You know, doing side missions for various factions in order to net you access to safe houses, new companions, better technology, stuff like that. So, basically, my idea for this is this. Wouldn't it be interesting to play for factional side quests to go back to how they were back in the day? Which, back in the day in Fallout games, like, you unlocked things via factional side quests. So, for example, in Fallout New Vegas, you didn't get the ability, you didn't start out with the ability to use power armor. You had to do a factional side quest for the Brotherhood of Steel, and then they trained you how to use power armor. So basically, to get access to one of the best armors in the game, you had to actually put in the work, you know, which is nice. I appreciate that more so than just, hey, we're going to give you access to one of the most powerful items in the first 10 minutes of the game, 10, 15 minutes of the game. That's lazy and just bad. That's lazy and bad game design. So I thought, wouldn't it be cool to have that same level of reward for you doing a faction? So let's say you help the NCR. Let's say this game, as I said, the setting of my Ultimate Fallout game would be on the West Coast, and the Pacific Ocean, would have biomes in Hawaii, California, parts of California, Hawaii, San Diego, Hawaii, maybe Oregon, Washington State, aka Seattle, that type of thing. And for this, you'd have to deal with the NCR because the New California Republic, all that type of stuff. You do faction stuff. Maybe you have a grand faction and sub factions within that grand faction. So you have the NCR, you have the Rangers, you have the Army, you have the merchants, the caravanners, stuff like that. Doing missions for these factions nets you things. So like helping out the caravanners expand their ranks from just being, caravan trains going from point A to point B to like having ships, maritime trading means that shit gets cheaper to procure. So let's say, hypothetically speaking, initially weapons, like let's say manufactured Japanese technology style weapons, so like katanas and Japanese technology weapons that might be rare in the beginning of the game. Let's say you do a factional quest for them, and within a few weeks in game time, you have access to these things for cheap. Not ultra cheap, but far more affordable than they were before. So you actually you have an incentive for doing these types of things. You have an incentive for doing side missions of that nature. I think that could work. I think that would be an awesome. I think that would be an awesome thing to do. In my humble opinion. Obviously, the Brotherhood of Steel is, a lot of people like the Brotherhood of Steel, so let's keep it moving. Let's have the Brotherhood of Steel in this game. But we do something a little bit different. We have the Brotherhood of Steel, but they have their own sub-factions. Alright? They have their own sub-factions, so you have like maybe you have a Brotherhood of Steel who, like, you can actually make real choices on where you want the Brotherhood of Steel to go. Maybe you have like 3 sub-factions of the Brotherhood of Steel. You have people who are isolationists, people who wanna strike a balance between isolationists and people who want to open it up, and then reunificationists who basically are like, look, we split before, but it was between us, the isolationists, and the followers of the Apocalypse. Yes, lore-wise, the followers of the Apocalypse and the Brotherhood of Steel used to be one faction, but the followers of Apocalypse decided to be more altruistic and help people. The Brotherhood of Steel became isolationist and tech hoarders to prevent the Great War from happening again. It's bullshit. But anyway, that's generally the gist of that particular thing. So maybe, depending on how you basically do that factional side quest, you can greatly change how that area, that Brotherhood of Steel in that area on the West Coast does. It's like, okay, well, what are they going to do? Will they become more open? Will they become more isolationist, or will they try to be a balance between both? Your choices, how you play the game, what your stats are, what you've invested in. So if you're a charismatic son of a bitch, this might be easier. Not ultra easy, because you'll still have to do certain quests for them and broker certain deals, shit like that. But that's just me. So So that's the end of this segment. Just some of my ideas for the factional side quests. I didn't go ultra in depth for all of them because, you know, they're new factions and stuff like that. So tell me what you think. Tell me what your ideas are, and we'll get to the conclusion after the cut. Okay, so basically, this is part 2 of my ultimate Fallout game. Part 3 is incoming. In part 3, I will go over, you know, gameplay minutia. So, you know, how like weapons handled, modifications, you know, in-depth gameplay mechanics. An interesting idea I have for VATS to make more sense. In an interesting way. So yeah, stay tuned. That'll be coming up sometime later on this week, so think Thursday or Friday. I have to get my notes in place, stuff like that. Let's see what else. That's it. Oh no, that's not it. I also will be talking about what I would like to see from, well, in terms of, you know, petty stuff like I'm tired of the same fucking music being done, you know, in every Fallout game. You know what I'm talking about. If I have to listen to hear about Butcher Pete hacking and whacking and sacking and cutting meat, I'm tired of that shit. So with that being said, you know, I'll tell you about what I'd like to see in the future of, you know, in terms of story, in terms of music and stuff like that. So we'll get to that after in part 3. Future-wise, I will be covering some stuff that I'd like to hear from see in my next Fallout game as well. But you know, if there's enough material, we'll go to a part 4. In terms of the channel, we have a podcast every Wednesday and Saturday, 7:30 p.m. to 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Remember, rate, comment, share, subscribe. So, yeah. And this Wednesday, we're doing a belated 420 cast. So, the topics for this Wednesday's podcast will be the dankest games we've ever played. In other words, games that the people making them had to be high, or games that make you feel like you're high while playing. We'll talk about what games are we looking forward to playing this summer that weren't canceled or pushed back. What game or game series that has a passionate fan base that we've never liked and why. We'll also be covering, will we see another a major console entry that isn't from Nintendo, Sony, or Microsoft. And finally, we'll cover what game or game series do we wish was brought back with a total revamp, like Seiken Densetsu 3, Trials, aka Trials of Mana. We'll also take whatever free topics you guys want. So, you know, if you have any topic suggestions, leave them in the comments section, and you know, if they're interesting, we'll add them to Wednesday's cast or Saturday's cast, depending on, you know, whenever you do this. So that's the end of the video. Rate, comment, share, subscribe. You can reach me, well, via Gmail. You can @ me on Twitter, all that type of stuff. So it's all here. You can send it anytime you want to. Peace, good night, and I'm out.